Harvey. She will be your lecturer for today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So, yes, I am Dr. Laura Harvey. I work here at Waipapa Matarai, the University of Auckland. I am over the road that way in that big glass, shiny business school. I work in the Department of Management and International Business. And I love working there. I love teaching. I love researching. And it's my happy place. And I'm very happy to be here with you guys today. This is wonderful. This is the highlight of my year. As I said to a group over here, that every time I come and deliver this type of learning, I actually think that the exchange is I give you a little bit and you give me a lot, because your experiences, the work that you do in the public sector, doing fantastic work that is so meaningful, so rich, so needed in all of our countries. You always bring your experience and ideas and your own perspectives to this work. Like I say, I do learn ever so much. So you might be able to tell from my accent that I come from. Where do I come from? Scotland. And I see, this is a coincidence. You're seeing a man in tartan in that picture there, wearing a kilt. Didn't put it there, honestly. That's where I'm from. I am from Scotland. I came to Aotearoa 24 years ago with my beautiful family. My husband, who has a Kiwi dad, and my 3 children, who were 5, 4, and 10 months old at that time. Oh, that was a plane ride and a half. 2 little kids and a baby. And I have been here ever since, and I'm a proud citizen of Aotearoa now, and I love it so much. And I'm so happy that you guys, that the Manaki scholars, that you get to come here. And do you connect to whānau? Do some of you have family? Yeah, so isn't that wonderful? You get to come spend time with each other, spend time with loved ones. So good. So without further ado, shall we get going? Now, because there are 27 of you, what I would usually do in a smaller group, I would get people to introduce themselves. But you're in your second week, you all know each other's names, yeah? There's no way I'm going to learn 27 names in 5 minutes. So we'll go forward from here, and hopefully I'll pick up some of your names. Now, I understand from last week, some of the feedback is that you're really keen to get more opportunity to kind of network and work not in your home country groups, but perhaps to mix things up a bit. So are we all game for that at some point? Yeah, because in the second half, we have a big activity that I'll let you put yourselves into groups, but it'll be 6 groups, and it would be absolutely fantastic if we can have people from different countries in there and sharing your experiences and knowledge. That would be wonderful. So there we are, beautiful. Start with a beautiful picture. Now, this idea, this is our structure for today. We're going to get you guys to talk to each other about a stubborn problem you are experiencing in your work. We'll say, well, what is adaptive governance? We'll look at a framework that I think will help you. I'll give you a bit of a toolkit going forward. We'll have a break. You'll need one. Then we will do a scenario activity in there where you'll do that, putting your thinking to work with each other. And then we'll finish off with one thing that you think, that was a light bulb moment. Hopefully there's more than one, but one's fine. And what you think that you will take forward with you from the work that we do together back home into your roles, your work, your communities. So here we are. This idea of adaptive governance, the kind of leadership. So I specialize in leadership, part of the work that I do. And there's this idea of adaptive leadership. And it's, when we talk about leadership, we call it situational. So if I asked you, what do you understand leadership to be? Can anyone tell me, what do you think leadership is? This isn't any kind of, there is no wrong answer for this. There's multiple ideas of leadership. So does anyone have an idea? What do you think leadership is? What is it for you?
I often use John Maxwell's definition of leadership. That leadership is about influence. And it's looking at how you can influence yourself to influence others. So growing yourself to grow others.
Yeah, nice. I love that. So it's all about influence. Very nice. Any other ideas? Yes, sir.
I think it's about empowering others to be the best of themselves.
Okay. So that situates the power that you like to diffuse the power to have other people step up. Nice. I mean, these are all absolutely definitions of leadership. I think of leadership as situational, so it depends on the context. Sometimes you need a particular type of leadership depending on the situation. Other times it will be another type of approach. So sometimes you need to be the absolute boss, command and control. This is what we're doing, do it now. There are some situations that require that kind of leadership. And in other situations, it is about influencing others or empowering others for sure. So in this context, when we talk about adaptive governance, the leadership that we talk about here is about mobilizing, so getting people on board to tackle tough challenges and to thrive in it. Now that comes from a gentleman called Ron Heifetz and his colleagues who have come up with this, they put this name, adaptive leadership, to this type of leadership. They're really well known for that, and I would absolutely, there is a link, I think, on your Canvas to a YouTube video of Professor Heifetz talking about adaptive leadership, and I would highly recommend that you have just a wee listen to that at some point. I think it will really resonate with you, hopefully. So adaptive leadership, here it is about what leaders do when the problem, whatever the problem issue is, when it can't be solved by authority, expertise, or technical fixes alone. So this type of leadership comes into play when the real challenge involves people's values, their relationships, their habits, the competing priorities that people have. So in governance settings, that often means working in situations where the formal policy might be clear, but the deeper work that has to be done, the change, is actually political and relational. It's between people, and it's uncomfortable to make that change. So in this session, we are going to focus on leadership that is not about having answers as much as mobilizing people, getting them to come along with you to confront uncomfortable, difficult realities and to work through them together. So we'll, as we go through, we'll unpack what we mean by an adaptive challenge. What does that actually look like? And I think you'll all have your own examples once we start to get into that. So Now this, I drew together information from the UNDP Asia Pacific. There was a report, 2026, the Pacific Islands Forum 2022, and various pieces of academic literature that I looked at. So this is not me as an expert. I have drawn, there'll be 5 categories, and I want any of you to challenge or agree with or enlarge on any of these 5. You know, do you recognize it? Do you not? So it'll become clear here. So here we are. So this is about highlighting why adaptive leadership matters so much in these specific public sector settings. So many of the challenges that you face in your day-to-day work, the same here in Aotearoa public sector, it's not about problems that can be fixed by an expert and you know who to go to and they can give you the solution. It's about challenges, difficulties that are multi-brilliant. Yeah. So this one here. Does anyone recognize this? If we look at problems with accountability and integrity, so the deficits, the lack that can happen there. So does this resonate with anyone? Investigations find wrongdoing, but the same patterns recur. So leadership codes exist on paper, so how to behave, but the culture doesn't shift. Accountability bodies face political resistance, so power resistance to their mandates. Does that resonate with anyone? Is that your experience? You can have, hey, we've got this new policy, but you know, is there real accountability for it being put into practice? Followed through. I see lots of people nodding. This resonates?
Yes.
Yeah. What about the governance capacity of a small island state? This is from this literature. So small public services, you are asked to govern complex, interlinked challenges such as climate change, health, justice, land issues. There is limited staff, limited budgets, and relationships where everyone knows everyone, and there's power differential in that, isn't there? There's hierarchy, there is culture, there is habit. Does this resonate? Is this your experience? Too much work, not enough people? Yeah. So would anyone like to speak to what this is like in the day-to-day? Yes, Nat?
On accountability and integrity deficits,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we've had real examples of like having the leadership code, got the participation from the population and make the list of the code, did all the consultation, even got people right up to the top to accept it, even put them up in the Parliament House and the Cabinet Room and places. But after a while, yeah,
Slowly,
they don't practice it, they don't, yeah, the culture just didn't shift. So, yeah, it's something like
There's
to take it up when I go back.
something deeper is at play. Yeah, that exemplifies what we're going through today. Yeah, we'll unpack why. So, climate change is a governance crisis. National climate plans exist, but sometimes communities haven't heard of them. So technically, they are excellent policies perhaps, but they fail because they were designed without the input of the people that they're meant to protect. Does that sound, yeah? Yeah. So, well, we'll give some solutions eventually. Traditional versus modern governance. Now, you know, I am from Scotland, and so I have no experience of what it is to be a Pacific Islander, obviously. So forgive me if any of my language isn't what it should be. It would take a lifetime for me to learn all of this. So please, you know, tell me, put me straight if this isn't. So chiefly systems, village councils, and customary authority, they carry a deep legitimacy within your home states. But that place in your society can sit in tension with formal public service frameworks, with the idea of merit-based HR. So the people who are best at the job are the ones that should get it. That's perhaps not always the case. And with constitutional rights. I know we've got a couple of HR people in the room. If you wanted to, is there a, does this resonate at all? Does this, it's not that it's wrong, it's that this is how life is, that we have the traditional approach and we have this modern governance idea, and they don't always marry up. Yeah. Now, this idea of gender equity and governance. We're talking about, you know, governance across a public sector. So findings from these different forums is that women often manage food and water and things needed for resilience in their families and communities, and yet often they are excluded from decision making that affects them most. Is that something that you think is valid? Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yes. So here we've got this intersection of where you're working. So often limited capacity. You've got deep community relationships. There is a gendered approach to power. We are all experiencing climate vulnerability and all that comes with that. There is an ongoing tension between formal institutions and customary authority in communities as well. So for you as Pacific Islands public servants, the work of governance often isn't about just implementing rules, but it's about building legitimacy. You are navigating great complexity often in your work and in your communities, and trying to mobilize people across very different ways of understanding leadership, of understanding authority, and understanding change. Yeah. Now, we're going to pair and share. So I don't know, I mean, you might like to choose someone that you haven't spoken to or worked with, or stay in your groups, that's fine. But find someone next to you. So these are the, you know, the different themes that came through from those forums and from that academic work. They're just sitting there if you want to refer to them. But what I want you to do, take a couple of minutes to think about your work, your daily work. What are some of the problems that your organization has tried to fix. And they've tried to fix it more than once, but it keeps coming back. So it's something that money has been thrown at it, effort, energy, and yet this problem keeps coming back up. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that. It might sit under one of these themes, maybe not. So with a partner, or you can do it in threes, that's still good. Tell each other, what is this problem that just keeps coming up? What has your organization done to try and solve it, but it keeps not working? And why you think this problem keeps coming back. So we'll give you 5 minutes. Again, no right or wrong answers. This is just to share your experiences. I'll do a timer, 5 minutes.
Preparing chocolate. What did your organization
Okay, so I had a conversation with this gentleman here, where he very much is explaining the complexity of the problem, of lack of budget, lack of finance, which means you can't do the work as well as you want to, as much as you want to. Yeah, always a problem in the public sector, lack of finance. Do we have any group who'd like to share with our common theme the problems that keep coming up? Because this is a recurring problem, the lack of finance. So.
Yes.
Yes.
So me and my colleague here, Crystal,
Yeah.
from New Caledonia, we had an interesting discussion on the two separate issues that we face. So she works in the health sector in New Caledonia, and the recurring issue in New Caledonia is the gap between the modern health system and the cultural health system. And this is because the hospital in Nomea, they try to incorporate customary people and traditional healing to their services, and yet in the indigenous region, they prefer to treat their people in. And so they've developed a lot of policy framework to try and improve that divide, but it keeps recurring. And I also share my problem. I work for the Electric Power Corporation. So we're very much male dominated, and there's this culture of gentlemen's club that keeps. So there's a high turnover rate for our technical people, the younger engineers, the linemen, and also our tree clearers. But they keep moving, and the thing that always comes out from the exit interview is that the managers scream at them, tell them off. And so us as the HR department, we try to train, we try to increase salary so for retention.
Yeah.
But people keep leaving because so it's a accountability and integrity deficit as well as a traditional environments. So that we
Yeah.
have similar issues that keeps
Yeah.
happening, and Crystal will get able to share more in a few months.
Absolutely. These are adaptive challenges. We'll just go on to unpack what I mean by that. So, from an adaptive leadership perspective, from Professor Highfield's work, there are two ways of looking at problems and issues. That you can divide them up into technical problems, and then there are, you're describing, what's described here, there are adaptive challenges. So, what do I mean by technical problems? So this distinction sits at the very heart of adaptive leadership. Technical problems, they might be difficult, but they can usually be identified and addressed through existing expertise by authority and by procedures. Adaptive challenges are different. They are harder to name. They are easier for people to avoid. And they require people to change not just what they do, but how they think, how they relate to others, and how they share responsibility. So that is why adaptive work is slower and messier, and often a place of contestation. People will argue over this. But it's also why this understanding is so important for the kinds of governance challenges that we face day in and day out. So if something's a technical problem, if my computer, my laptop doesn't work, I phone the IT, the university IT department, and they tell me to turn it off and on again. And then I say, it's still not working. So someone will come and they have the knowledge, they are an expert, I know that they will fix it or find someone who can, right? So when you've got a problem, there's a quick and easy solution. I phone the IT department. It can be solved by authority or an expert, the IT chap, generally a man. A problem that is technical will require change in maybe 1 or 2 places in your work, and then it'll be fixed. It is generally siloed, contained within one department or something. People generally really like technical solutions. I know someone who is the answer, great, get them in, they will fix it for us. And the solution can typically be implemented quite quickly. That's how you know you have a technical problem that will fit within these various aspects here. Now, when I asked you to share with one another a problem that keeps coming up and keeps coming up, the problem of Indigenous approaches to health and other approaches to health, and the problem of gender issues and hierarchy and culture and these things, they do not, you cannot fix that. You would have bashed your head against the wall many times trying to convince people not to shout at the people under them, not to be awful. Yeah, you would have the same. You keep trying, but the problem keeps coming up. So these are adaptive challenges. So it's difficult to identify. In some ways, there's multiple your problem, multiple aspects to it. It's not simple. It's easy for people to deny. That's also when you can tell, because it's hard work to change people's attitudes and cultures that they've had for so long. So it's easy for people to say, oh, no, that's not the problem. We just need more funding, or that's not the problem. We need to have people trained better so that they're not bothered by this behavior. You know, it's easy for people to deny it, but to do the work that is required to change these cultures, habits, etc., it means people have to examine their own beliefs, the roles that maybe they have. So the person who thinks that you're the boss by shouting at people, they need to come to the realization that actually that's not the best way to be. But that means changing their approaches to work and the belief that perhaps a man should be the head of a team, etc., to shift that belief to actually a woman can do it just as well. That can be very difficult work for people. An adaptive challenge. It is the people with the problem who really need to do the work of solving it. So this example of the health, where you have indigenous approaches to health, like we have Rongoa here, Maori approach to health, that perhaps sometimes people need what the Western medical model will give them, but it's for those people to do the work of solving that. You can give them a hospital and say you should come, but it's for the people in the community to change their beliefs, their values around it, to say, oh no, actually I can take them here and my culture. That's hard work to get, but they're the only people who can do it. You can try and talk them around, but they have to do the work themselves. And it needs change in numerous places. There isn't just one fix for it. People often resist acknowledging adaptive challenges are even a thing. Well, why should I change? I'm perfectly happy living as I am. This is fine. And when you come to trying to fix these problems, these types of problems, it actually needs experiments. So you need to try things. It takes time to implement changes, and you need to bring people with you. So when I say do experiments, so a little, taking the health example, it would be giving money to one particular community, perhaps, giving them some resources to integrate different approaches to health and seeing, does this work when they do it within the community? And if you get traction on it, if you get things are a bit better, you think, okay, so that experiment, that actually paid off. We can amplify that. We'll turn it up a bit and snowball the good effects in that and hopefully get more people on board. Or part of an experiment, sometimes it fails. But it was just a small experiment. What have you lost? You turn down the effort into that and move on to something else. But of course, you've got knowledge from it. A failure gives you data. It gives you more understanding. Why did it fail? What can we do differently next time? So, you know, I'm saying a lot of words here. It's a lot of stuff, but adaptive challenges are very hard. And that's what people like to kind of turn a blind eye to, because it takes a lot of effort to do anything about it. But I think we all live with adaptive challenges every day. Why do we really need it? Well, you've all shared your experiences of problems that are not going away. You've heard of VUCA, that we live now, particularly now, in a time of volatility. Things are a bit uncertain. We have, you know, war in the Middle East, etc., which will affect, on one level, it will affect petrol prices, it will affect all of that. You know, that's going to have real knock-on effects for all of us. I think that's one example of the uncertainty. There's complexity. Oftentimes there is no, as we say, simple answer to problems. There are multiple nuanced reasons why we have issues, and ambiguity. So this feeling that you're just not really sure what's happening. I think all of us live in that a bit. We're not quite sure what's round the next corner. So I like to think of it as for these adaptive challenges, that it's like a ball of wool, which is really, really, really tangled up. And I don't think we've got much hope of unraveling that big tangle, but we can work on parts of it. We can tease out parts of that ball of wool, but I don't think we'll ever truly solve gender imbalance. Will we ever truly solve climate change? We can work on bits of it, but there is no magic wand, hey? But it doesn't mean we don't keep going and try. So the thing about this work of adaptive challenges, working on them, you're doing leadership and you're all leaders in your organizations while you're here. Followers, they want comfort, they want stability, they want you to give them solutions, because that's a great place to be in, isn't it? But that is babysitting. Real leaders ask hard questions. And yeah, it can knock people out of their comfort zones. People don't really like that. That's a hard place to be in. But the leaders, sure, you ask the hard questions, you keep pushing, and you manage the unhappiness of the people around you, your fellow workers. You manage their distress. So thinking about this idea of adaptive challenges, if I gave you the example of diabetes, so I think we all understand in our communities here in Aotearoa and in your communities in Scotland as well, actually, diabetes is, on one level, it is something, if someone has it, you can give them medicine, you can give them insulin, right? And they can go about their day-to-day business. But actually, diabetes for our communities is an adaptive challenge. Because if we take the example of, there's a lot of diabetes in South Auckland, here in Tamaki Makaurau. So people become diabetic sometimes because they live in communities where they don't have access to good food. Yeah. They maybe live in communities where there isn't much money, and it's cheaper and easier to buy food that perhaps isn't so good for you. Sometimes there is a lack of understanding of what is good for one's health, etc. So, you know, this is an adaptive challenge because you can't just fix it by giving people medicines. We need to have multiple approaches across communities to try and alleviate, but it will never go away. We will never be able to solve it until some marvelous scientist comes up with some vaccine so people don't get it, right? But that's an example of an adaptive challenge that we have here in Aotearoa. So another example that we have, and I don't know, maybe some of you will have this in your own communities. We have young people, our rangatahi, here in Auckland, who leave school very early, maybe 13 or 14. They're out of schooling. They're on those edges of society. So how do we fix it? How do we get them so they can get the skills to be able to become contributing members of our society, live a meaningful life, find meaning in work, and be part of the community. How do we solve that? That's so difficult. It is not enough to tell them to go to school. That's not working. It is not enough to give them a community centre with a place to go day after day. That's not enough either. It is a super complex problem. We can't just leave them to do nothing. But it is a problem that we have to give back to the communities because it is their community elders, their whānau, the people around them need to all work together on trying to provide a solution to this issue of unemployed and undereducated rangatahi, young people that we have. So there's another example of a adaptive challenge, which I think will resonate with some of you. So this Professor Ron Heifetz and his colleagues, they've given a lot of thought to this. When we talk about adaptive leadership, what are the things you should do? How do you mobilize the people around you? And it's not, you don't take on every problem. I think you have to be smart and think, oh, there's this one big adaptive challenge that I think we can get some traction on. We can do some work on some of it, because to try and tackle all the problems would be exhausting and too much for anyone. So what they say is that you have to, it is about diagnosis, so actually identifying the problem and taking action. So here we are. Number one, they say you, the leader, you have to get on the balcony. And what they mean by that is that you have to step out of your day-to-day work that, you know, we're all so busy, step back from that immediate problem and take a look at the wider system. So it might mean noticing not only the formal policy or the government structure, but also think, okay, what about the roles of kinship, church, chiefs, community expectations, donor influence, and island relationships? So really taking a look and thinking, okay, I'm looking down on this and I can see all these different parts that I think have an influence in this challenge, either causation or as a way to try and approach it. So get on the balcony, have a look and think, these are all the parts that I think are involved here. Next, diagnose. Is this an adaptive challenge, or is it just a really difficult technical problem that if we search far and wide enough, we can find the expert who will give us the solution? So this diagnosis, understanding that actually it's something that we can't find a fix for, so we have to approach it as an adaptive challenge. So often, you know, the real challenge is underneath the issues. So the issue of people being bullying at work, well, actually, the issues are underneath that. What makes someone behave like that in the first place? Very complex. So often the problem isn't just about weak implementation of the work, but there's tensions between formal rules and the lived relationships and obligations that we all have. So infuse the work with meaning. So when you mobilize the people around you and you lead them, you have to tell a story. You have to create a narrative. You have to articulate the problem in such a way that people go, yeah, I'm on board. Because this is hard work, remember? The adaptive challenge, It's hard to do. It's hard to get people to change behaviors. It's hard to get people to change habits. You really need to get that buy-in from the people around you. Number 4, you gotta build trust. Trust, it's a tiny little word, but it is something that does a lot of work. It's actually a big thing. And it is really, really difficult to build trust sometimes. To get people, you've got to buy, these work hand in hand to get buy-in from people. They need to trust you. They need to trust that you know where you're taking them. So to build trust, really difficult. Losing trust happens in a heartbeat, right? You can lose trust super quick. It can take a really long time to build it back. Part of building trust is ensuring that you listen to people. And when you listen to people who are perhaps outliers, who have a slightly different opinion, then make them feel included. Always include people, because that is a way to build trust across the people with you. You need to protect those voices that aren't always listened to, because maybe they have some of the answer. Give the work back to the people. So part of attacking an adaptive challenge is that it involves change. People have to change to affect any benefit, to shift the adaptive challenge to a place where it's not so bad, right? And the thing about change is that people often don't like it because they're not comfortable. They think, well, who am I in this different set of behaviors? I don't know my place. I feel uncomfortable in it. It's also change. It's also about power. So yeah, you work in the public sector, you work in governance, you tell other people what to do, right? People in charge, they decide who gets the money, who goes where. Oftentimes there is power in that, and it is for some people a big step to say, also we give the money to the community and we trust, working with them, we trust that they will find some solutions. That's a big thing. Some people are very comfortable in power. They are very comfortable being the ones with the answers, or thinking they have the answers. They think that's what leadership is. But with these types of adaptive challenges, the people with the problem are likely to have the solutions. Working with you, but you have to work with them. So this can be a difficult place, this place of loss, when you have change. And regulating stress, because remember, these are challenges that people often want to ignore because it's easier to keep doing what you're doing. People often don't want to change because they think that they will lose power, and maybe they will lose power, but you know, that's okay. Things move on, things change.
It is what it is.
That's what it is. Sometimes the oldies have to make way for the young ones to come up, to give them the power. You can't keep grabbing onto it. But part of the job of leadership here is to say, I understand that you feel afraid. I understand that you feel uncomfortable. And this is what we're working towards. This is a better future. Sometimes it's worth giving up some of your power. Yeah. So these are all big things. Nobody said this was easy. And part of the 7th task is to generate more leadership, because these adaptive challenges are big. climate change, right? It's massive. It affects all of us massively, particularly Pacific Islands, sea level rise, all of that. It's huge. And no one team, no one department, no one government can solve this, right? It's huge. So you need to generate more leadership, give power to other people, allow other people, when you have these other voices that come in, this is part of the building trust, giving work back to people, allow others to grow in their leadership, because if leadership is mobilizing people towards tackling a challenge, then let that happen too. Does any of this resonate with you? Do you think, oh, this lady, she's just talking and talking, but what does this look like in your work?
I just wanted to comment on point number 7. I think that point is so key. Because often when we're trying to generate leadership, we need to also identify whether you're falling back into authority or you're exercising leadership. And that's something I recognize in the workplace, because when we talk about authority, we always make it clear in some of the programs that we run that authority is the positions and titles that you have, but it's not about people. And so a lot of us get stuck with that. So what happens is that you're not generating leadership, we're just more fixed in your output. You have to, this is what you have to do. And then it's not about others. It's not about the people that you're serving.
Yeah.
And so when you move away from, but it's good to recognize that we all start out with authority, that we start out with positions and titles, but it shouldn't define you. And so a lot of people get stuck on that. And so the authority head is like, I'm so powerful, blah, blah, blah.
It's intoxicating.
That's right.
Right?
And so the challenge for us is that we don't get stuck in authority, because that's our titles and positions. But then when we make it about the people, that's when we're exercising leadership.
Yeah.
And we navigate and we work through that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just raise it because it's not easy, because that's something I've identified, that people get stuck with their titles. And then when you challenge them, that leadership is about servanthood, that it is about serving people, then they realize, okay, it is about people, it is about building relationships.
Yeah, there's that some when there's the absolute clinging on to hierarchy, and that's my name on the door, and the buck stops with me, so I get to have the last say. That attitude is like, have you heard zero-sum game? Where some people think there's only so much of a pie, and if I have this much and you get that much, if you get more, then that means I get less. So to get out of that mindset and to think, actually, why don't we grow the pie for everyone? Yeah, but that's easy to say and hard to do. Yeah, very much so. There's an example of the e-governance. What did you say? E-governance? No? Do you have it in any of your e-governance? Yeah.
Already covered it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was from last year, someone in this cohort last year had said it was so difficult with people in her department who had worked there since they were 16 and were really good at what they did. Really good. The filing. Knowing which policy document, all of these things. They knew their job, they knew it incredibly well. And then when they brought in this e-governance, yeah, all of that, they had to learn to use a computer, and the pushback was huge. So there, you know, that's an adaptive challenge, this shift to this very, very different way of doing governance. And the reason the pushback was so hard, and she had to threaten that people would lose their jobs because she was paying for trainers to come in to show them how to use computers, etc., and they weren't turning up. They were avoiding that work because remember, when that's a very difficult piece of work, people often want to deny it and avoid it, change, because they thought they were giving up the power of being incredibly good at their job, because they were, to now being in a position where they are not good at it because they don't know how to use it. And people, there was a loss of mana, a loss of position and power. And that's really difficult. But the work of getting them to move with the times and do that work, that was huge. Have any of you experienced that? People that just don't want to change. Yeah, yeah, huge. So, oh golly, morning tea, is it morning tea time? Is it now? Yeah. Oh, so let's have morning tea. I'll be here. So in this half hour, if you wanna, I feel I've been talking at it, but I'm gonna get you guys to do the work after morning tea. So load up on sugar so you've got energy. Okay. I think your morning tea is here. Very good. Very good session. Oh. Yes, yes.
Option free of
So they
being
don't-
told what to do, they have
Habits,
honestly
values,
say what they women side and then so this will continue for both generations.
monitoring.
Once you especially if the money we also get culture. Yeah, it really hurt. Yes, it is, because of course, No, not so here. Yeah.
Yeah, I should.
That's why I was saying. High school. You remind me. So good. To microwave. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, nice. I've got some lemon and ginger tea. Lost track of time. You're one of the doors or here. Yeah.
Actually, I just posted her because they're quite. There's so much of people outside there. I think so you might get disrupted, so it's kind of usually. Just like, you know, then they'll have their morning tea tomorrow, so. Maybe they'll have their lunch. Because they said not lunch, but not this week, but.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and.
Oh my gosh, 2 morning teas.
Oh, yeah. That would be so happy. Yeah, so we're just thinking that it might be.
Oh, you'll shut that.
So we'll just shut the door, yeah.
We didn't have any. For lunch. This is the yeah, my so I don't confirm. Yes, the sheets. You can post it, you see that kind of. So, I need to put that in Oh, we'll go back. Yes, that's it. I'll try it. This is what I like. Yeah, but yeah, I will move on. You know, Jeremiah, oh no, you sent you sent. Sometimes, so you know, like, let me demonstrate some kind of step. And the sources, like, all these things. Then I was No, I didn't. But she's got like. We bought it from but we finish our copy, right? Yeah. I know. I was curious about and I think so it's now. And so these concepts might not be relevant like no, I'm saying. That's why it's.
You refresh?
Yes.
Yes. Because I think we just read the topic, but it's just like. It's just. And then us to add in our.
Yeah.
What is your favorite menu?
I go to the idea of
Thank you.
I love to.
Oh, and we'll do,
Yeah.
One of you do the. So. Yes.
And then I have this already. But you know about that, yeah, and some.
Okay, so not everyone's back, but I've got an activity I'm gonna get you guys to mix up your tables, but I have talked so much that I have not covered a couple of little bits, so let's do those. Maybe if you want to take a picture, this will be up on Canvas. Actually, there's a PDF of it, but I mean, these are the kinds of skills, right, that you need to do this sort of work. So this diagnostic thinking, actually, what is it we're dealing with here? Is it adaptive? Is it technical? Before you decide how to respond. To recognize, I think so much in our work, we go case by case. Here's the next thing, okay, I'll deal with it. Here's the next thing, I'll deal with it. But it's the getting on the balcony, isn't it? Just to step back and think, am I actually seeing that there are patterns in this? That there's an underlying causes that are actually bubbling up and make up these cases that keep coming across my desk or through our department. So recognizing that actually it might be a systemic causes, systemic conditions that are causing it. To understand that feeling uncomfortable, being a bit, oh, I'm not sure about this, that can actually be quite productive. I think sometimes when we understand that something doesn't feel that comfortable, it's actually probably work that's well worth doing. Having difficult conversations with people without triggering this political backlash, easier said than done, but learning how to navigate. Being inclusive, bringing in those who are generally not listened to, finding a way to do that. Women, youth, those who do not have formal authority, who aren't usually invited into a conversation, finding a way to speak with them too. Understanding this relational, all about people, right? Building the trust. And it makes that technical authority effective in small communities, that they understand that you can come in and you'll be an expert for part of the problem at least. Cultural navigation. We all live it every day. There's navigating again through traditional takes on governance, and to work with traditional governance as being a genuine partner in doing the work. It's not that this is better and that's not good because that's old. No, of great worth, the traditional governance, and it's learning how to work together and share the space, and protecting those voices again that perhaps aren't heard so much, and making sure that there is quality engagement, holding the space for that. When you invite those in who perhaps aren't usually listened to, such as youth, ensuring that the people you work with, those around you, understand that those youth have every right to be there and to be involved in creating some solutions. Yeah. So, is there anything in here that you think, yeah, no, hard? All hard. Okay. Now, this is just a few of the strategies that we can use in the public sector. So community co-creation initiatives. I'll give you the example. I have a few examples. There's one from Aotearoa here. Well, we had a beautiful example of giving the work back to the people. Unfortunately, our government, when it came in, kind of cut the funding off, but governments before, we had something called Whanaora. So it was delivery of health services, but it was for Maori specifically, and it was run by Maori for Maori. And it wasn't so that our Health NZ, the health ministry, gave this funding, worked alongside, but gave the power to those Maori entities to deliver the health services for the Maori community, and it worked incredibly well. But it takes money, right? And it takes political will to allow those communities to have that money and to deliver those health services. So I'm sorry to say they have stepped back a bit with the most recent government. Another example is the Waikato River Authority. It's co-governing a whole river, and it is New Zealand's longest river. So this Waikato River Authority is a genuine, unique co-governance entity. So it was established through one of the treaty claims for, the treaty here in New Zealand. So part of the Waikato Tainui Raupatu claims, the Settlement Act of 2010 to be exact. So there is a board who oversee this river. It consists of 10 members, 5 are appointed by the Crown, and 5 come from the iwi, whose lands are around this river. So that's Waikato and Waipa River iwi, and they have operated under that since 2010. The authority has granted nearly $79 million across 485 different projects, little experiments, you might say, that are aimed at restoring the health and well-being of those river catchments. So there's that big environmental challenge of pollution, etc. in that river, and this is an actual adaptive governance approach to it, which is ongoing. It is still working, and the river is cleaned up significantly. So money well spent, effort well spent. Cross-sectoral, these things, adaptive challenges, they go across. It's never going to be solved by one team or one department or one ministry, one government ministry, for instance. It's bigger than that, So it needs people to work cross-sectorally, to collaborate, but for there to be some way of doing that, some mechanism where you can have collaboration. There needs to be more agile policy implementation. The digital governance, digital-driven decision-making, that is part of it. But as we alluded to earlier, you need people who can actually engage with this to lift the capabilities. So building local capacity for that leadership, when you see that the Whanaora, that there were Maori entities who were helping deliver the health services, you need the capacity in the communities to even do that. So part of it is training people. It is training people how to be on boards, how to do governance, etc. It takes time. Participatory budgeting, another approach. Stewardship, so kaitiakitanga, the te reo word for it. So this understanding that we need environmental resilience and lots of people should be involved in that. And citizen science and data collection. Some of you would maybe have that where you are for instance, monitoring climate change, You would draw information from communities who are living it every day and can tell you, this is what's happening to fish stocks, this is what's happening to water resources, etc. So to involve people in that, also important. Are any of you involved in any of these kinds of strategies? Do any of them look familiar? You're gonna take some of them home, suggest them to your bosses. Maybe you are the bosses. So really it's about bringing more people on board. Yeah. So those are just some of the ways you can do this adaptive governance. But again, to work with communities, to do cross-sectoral work, where's you can get resistance from people, right? Because they think, oh, I'll lose a bit of power, I'll lose a bit of mana. My knowledge won't be so important anymore. So these things can be quite difficult, but you've got to sell to them the better future, the possibility of it. Now, let's get you guys working. We've left heaps of time for this. Does anyone have any questions before we do this? I hope I brought you all with me. I know I'm Scottish and I speak very quickly when I get excited. So everyone's all, you can email me afterwards if you have a burning question. And even if you don't, email me too. Join up on LinkedIn, we can have chats. So I'm going to get you out your comfort zone. Are you sitting with the people you've been sitting with? Oh, yes. 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 Who would like to be brave? And we're going to have 6 groups. So I didn't know this. 6 tables. 6 different scenarios. So let's mix things up. Part of why you guys are here is to connect across your different jobs and countries, and we're all in the public sector. Me too. Delighted to say. So, would you like to help me? Will we encourage people gently to mix up? Yes. Shall we get max 5 to a table? Is that so? We might have 4, we might have 5. There are 27 of you. Yeah. That's your scenario. Maybe have a look at the scenarios. Are we all beautifully mixed up? Yeah. Okay. So you'll see on these sheets, so there's one for each of you, and there might be one left over. So each group, you've got a scenario. And I've given just one of these to each group, and it's got the 7 tasks of leadership, and it's got that strategic, the adaptive governance strategies, just as a little reminder that you might like to engage with. Now, read through. We'll give you 25 minutes. So if you just read through your scenario. Now these in the box at the bottom in the table, you've all got the same prompts, the same questions there. Basically, at the end of the 25 minutes, each group, you will volunteer someone and you will present your findings back to the room. So you can look at one or two of these questions. You can do more than one or two if you want. So we'll have probably about 3 or 4 minutes for each group to report back. So you can choose to just report back on what you think is the main challenge and how you would approach it. I would really love it if you were to definitely do the last one, which is what should you do in the first 90 days of tackling this challenge? Yeah, so definitely do that one, because it'd be nice if you all do this is what we do in the first 90 days. So does this make sense? Yes? I'll come round while you're working if anyone has any questions. But yeah, you've got some A3 sheets on the table. Jot down what you decide to go for to solve aspects of these challenges.
We haven't really gone too much because of time restraints.
Yes, I know. What's your scenario?
So we've looked at that challenge as the loss of data and sort of the incompletion of data collection. Yeah. Oh, our scenario is the government is finding it difficult to consolidate and put together information on birth, death and registration and land registration.
Yeah.
And challenges is around, of course, accessibility, people's awareness of the importance of registration as well as cultural practices. So those all come into play when having difficulty, when you have different sorts of data for people, and then people data is not complete in terms of land ownership and land disputes. So for the adaptive challenge, we've identified that the issue is, of course, data, the loss of data in terms of birth, death, marriage, and land. And we've also explained that the challenge is hinged on people not understanding the lack of awareness. There's certain cultural practices. We discussed the issues with UA as well as Kiribati. As well as Samoa, there's a lot of customary land disputes, and when it comes to court information and data, it's quite carried on from generations as opposed to being documented and put on record.
Yeah.
And it's a cultural practice that we continue to sort of embrace, and yet it doesn't really connect with the modern frameworks that we operate under governance.
Yeah.
So, and there's also fees are quite high. And people might find it expensive to go through registration. So the relevant concept is we really need to get on with government, assess the situation from the lens that holistically that there are different parts of policy making in terms of registration that needs to be addressed. As I've said, budgeting, awareness, as well as the cultural aspect. We also wanted to highlight that it needs to go back to the people. Nothing really works if you don't engage with your community. Those are affected. They understand why it's important to register. We've just had an interesting conversation about some of us that went through the same challenge of having our information registered for births. Yes, and the new way shared that it's true. When they were born in a different country, did they go back to their indigenous countries, their country of origin, and yet the sets of data don't match because, of course, practices on registration is a lot different from more for us. Yeah, and then we talked about adaptive moves, of course, community and co-creation. As we mentioned, it's quite important to have people on board.
Gonna
To
bring
engage
the-
with your community
yeah.
and sort of design what works for you, what's not.
Ask them what they're afraid of.
Yes, and then take a bit more ownership.
Yeah.
And for that, they'll be able to have more understanding. You know, we mentioned in our scenario that budgeting, affordability is quite a huge issue.
Yeah.
So we want people to also engage in identifying the costs and also the barriers of buying. The financial barrier that sort of hinders them from
Yeah.
going through registration. And of course, data, anything to do with data is quite daunting, especially for some of us. And once, if we have a bit more understanding why data is important, so we looked at citizen science and data collection to be that's a rule that people understand,
Yeah.
why it is important. The first 90 days of our scenario, of course, it goes back to diagnose and listen to people.
Yeah.
Co-design and find solutions. And then we can launch a more inclusive registration project.
I like it.
Because the scenario is for us to assist the consultants that's going
Yeah.
to design the new registration system.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that your first 90 days sounds very doable. You see what are some of the systemic issues? Ask the communities for their input and their collaboration and finding some solutions, and then begin to implement some policy that would help. Beautiful, wonderful. Who's next? Volunteer. Okay, so stand up, present to the group. What's your scenario?
So, our scenario number 3, the climate plan that belongs to no one. Basically, a small island designed a national climate adaptation plan. And the problem that we uncovered is that communities were not consulted in the process of the design of this adaptation plan, especially community leaders and women's group who take care of household food production, and local leaders, of course, who are necessary to have the adherence of their communities. And also we had identified a problem of coordination between ministries. So the relevant concepts that we outlined are a need to better identify the stakeholders in the problem, empower those with the problems, and support people through the uncertainty. Sorry. In terms of adaptative moves, what seems necessary is to create a community consultation and a co-design of the plan, create cross-ministry task force to break the silos, and implement a communication plan that is more transparent, accessible to the communities, and supported by data. The stakeholders that are important to embark into the process are the local leaders. It's understandable that for them, because we're talking, about relocation in this scenario. One big fear would be losing the land and the identity and the culture associated to that land. So it's primordial to engage the different group, and we thought best to engage them maybe separately, chiefs, women's, maybe the youth, in order to be able to have their participation So in terms of the first 90 days, it might be a bit ambitious, but we are thinking first month would be to identify the stakeholders in the communities and in the ministries in order to create this task force I was talking about just previously. The second month would be starting the consultation of the communities. And in the third month, if everything went well in the first 2 months, starting a report back to the communities on the findings of this of the consultations and to bring them up to date on what the plan is and if we could make it evolve to better engage them.
Nice, that's beautiful. Very detailed, awesome. And the first 90 days sounds doable if you've got money.
Yes.
Okay, who's next? Who's next? Yes, Matt. What's your scenario?
So I want to introduce our team. The name of our team is Team Awesome. Because we're gonna make a lot of difference in the 90 days. Yeah, and anyway, our scenario is reform. So the Pacific Island Public Service Commission is developing this major public service reform program. And so that's going to be covering merit-based recruitment, performance management, conflict of interest, and disciplinary procedures. And so 12 months into implementation, compliance looks great, but the problem is practice. And so as a group, we decided to use our first 91 days to pause and take a few days to get on the balcony. So our first step is getting on the balcony, and I think this is really key because the biggest issue here is while the reform is going to strengthen the process and procedures, the biggest issue is the behavioral change, and that takes quite a lot of time. So really priority of like half of our first 91 days is really doing a mapping exercise, looking at the current work practice and diagnosing the system. So looking at all those areas, recruitment, performance, management, conflict of interest, disciplinary procedures. Even what's interesting about this case is they've got a whistleblower mechanism and 2 of the staff they were not protected through the mechanism, but they were moved into another less desirable position. And so we just thought that we need a whole reassessment of the current system, looking at those areas, and that actually includes like talking to the staff, what is working, what is not working. And before even, so we're actually we've implemented, but now we're going backwards. And so given that we're going to be on the balcony, our next step, which is diagnosing the system, in order for us to ensure that our interventions will be meaningful, it's going to take a bit of time. And so we feel that priority of this whole 91 days is working with the staff, and that includes, 1, a lot of awareness. So that's really talking to them what this reform is about, because the issue is that a lot of the civil servants are now scared that they're going to be held accountable. And so because it's about practice, it's about strengthening the system, they have to trust the system. But it also means it's going to tease out, like what our brothers were saying, all the lazy people who are not productive, and so forth. So this exercise was just, we thought was just very effective to kind of tease that out. And so in diagnosing the system, like once we're mapping out what's the current practice, what's working, and not working, then our first few, it's going to be a phased approach. So the first one is really going to be looking at training. It's really training them in terms of this new reform process and looking at all these different areas and how we can better strengthen it so that we gain trust. And gaining trust also means that everyone is accountable to the system. It's a problem that we were able to relate to this because it's hardly happening across the board. And so in order for us to gain trust, then when they trust us, when we do the trainings, then they need to be building the process. So that means we're giving back the work to them. So they have to go back and strengthen those areas. So trusting them to do the work. That also means regulating stress,
So there's less stress, hopefully, because we're making a system that works. So that's the dream. And then generating more leadership is that, we're building a healthier work environment. So that everyone feels they belong, so a nice work environment, there's love, which is ideal. But that's how we will be generating more leadership. So this is the dream,
Get the
get
buy-in.
the vibe. Yes.
Yeah, and what do you do about those whistleblowers, about people's fear of if
Yeah.
I speak up?
That's right. So we have to go back and actually implement that. Because the problem is that they've created the mechanism without following the due process. And also seeking like an independent body. Because often, you can have the whistleblower mechanism, but if it's the very people who are going to be, so-called protecting you, that's not gonna happen. So then seeking advice on an independent body that can come in
To
to the
help
investigation
Build
and
trust.
ensure that the
Yeah.
person is being protected.
Yeah. Nice,
Team effort.
beautiful. And I love how you took 91 days. That's perfect. Okay, who's next? We're halfway through. Is it on or 2 or 3? You would like to go, Matt?
Good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. So, scenario 4 for our team, the leadership code, no one leads rights. So some of the discussions, formulated around in our group was the adaptive challenge was violating the leadership code. And then the deeper issue that we've identified was, how it's been normalized culture, behavior, and violating the leadership code. The relevant concepts that we believe are important in this aspect or in this scenario is the get on the balcony approach, diagnose the system, and build trust. Why? It's been 15 years, no clear process, recurring offences, and no prosecution. My colleague here will elaborate more on how we're gonna deal or sort this problem out.
Nice.
One of the quality models that are done very well. Very way to both bonus staff and driven decision making. This is for example in the Solomons as some of my colleagues from the ombudsman, they have been having awareness knowledge on this, but one of the policies that we want to emphasize here is ensuring that all the organization takes an update on how the system works, because currently the process of how the decisions has been made over the years is the 14 years the cases have gone through and then it didn't reach like end of outcome, like haven't resolved, and then 2 founding members they related in the case study that 2 founding grades they have case studies. Case reached the leadership confirmation, however, they have been reelected. So in the system there is a loophole, so it needs to be improved. That's it. So I'm moving on to losses. We want to emphasize that the commission board decision makers needs to be well advised. Yeah? We emphasize on local capacity building programs, ensuring that all that commissioners, the investigators, even the parliamentarians at the top level to the bottom level, all should be aware of the processes, the code of conduct in the public sector. We go to the 90 days. So we chose that get on the balcony, consult all relevant stakeholders. So I would say is that some matters. The governance sector will comprise of ombudsman, leadership of commission, some anti-corruption. They're all under the Prime Minister's office. So the Prime Minister's office is overseeing all these things. So there's a high need to reintegrate or change or improve the current systems that has been currently ongoing. There's a need to be a change in leadership or improvement in the systems that are already in place, the processes that have been there for so many years. There's lot of improvement. There's big system of improvements, but no accountability there. It's really needs to be a review of the leadership of the commission, submission of recommendation to commissions of the board. Yeah, and sorry, but I think I'm just following the context factors. So we look at this on the function of collectivism and kinship. Pacific culture is typically emphasized on collectivism, yeah? Prioritizing the well-being of family and community of individuals. So how we approach this issue is collective actions, collaborations through all stakeholders. Thank you so much.
Nice, thank you very much. So hard conversations about misconduct and political protection, all of those things need to be had. Easier said than done, but beautiful, thank you. Next group.
Nice to see you.
Here we are, very good, thanks. Okay, now what's your scenario?
I'm out here, so I'm not standing. I don't do anything. So, yeah, our scenario was the investigation that changes nothing. And basically, it was an investigation into nepotism, favoritism in procurement and abusive position within the government ministries. There were 11 investigations, and there was one ministry that showed sustained improvement, but no one was sure why. So we thought in the first, that this is a blended solution probably to the situation where policy and also adaptive governance was required. So, you know, for people to follow policy, you know, there needs to be obviously an understanding of the policy, your understanding of how much authority you have in every position, the government, you know, the decision levels of your authority to approve or disapprove things. And there needed to be that understanding. So we would do workshops to that effect and explain to everyone, you know, what their roles and goals are. But, you know, for that one that worked, we thought we should investigate that more fully to find out what they did to make their situation work where others failed. So that was to get on a balcony and have a look at those sort of things. And then to build trust in the process, that would require a bit of effort also, just to encourage open and transparent dealings, and also review of procurements and all that sort of thing. And, you know, provide a confidential environment for whistleblowers to report things that were going amiss. So, the adaptive government strategies, just mentioned a few, agile policy implementation, to train, set limitations, to do just what we're doing now, present some scenarios and train people into those, into what they would do. Also, the most important thing I thought in this was that declaration of conflict of interest. And that needed, I know in our organisation, I've set up a page where everyone at any time can declare their conflict of interest. Whether you know they think they would gain or it's just an association, it just needs to be identified for transparency. So and then the reporting also seemed to be a problem in our scenario too. And I thought we'd establish reporting templates. So every ministry could report on a template, and that would be easier for the Ombudsman's office to monitor and evaluate what's going on.
Nice.
So that's it.
Excellent, thank you very much. Awesome, lucky last. All seems very practical.
For our group, we have scenario 6. The gender policy that everyone supports and no one implements. So on the surface, the government has a gender equality policy that everyone agrees, but in reality, very little has changed. And the real problem is, it's not that people don't understand the policy or don't support it. The real problem is no one feels responsible for actually making it happen. Gender equality is treated as women's business, or as the National Gender Equality Policy unit's job. Instead of something every ministry and senior leader owns, many leaders are comfortable saying the right things, but not actually implementing. And so they're unwilling to change how the decisions are made and who has power or how the success is measured. So if we look at it at a deeper level, this is about power, culture, and habits. So traditional ideas about leadership still favors men, and some ministries don't want outside interference. And so leaders avoid change because it feels uncomfortable or threatening. So I'll let my other colleagues to follow with the other outputs.
Regarding the relevance concepts, which we have to give the work back to the people, building trust. We have to let people know that they have to trust the leader in order for this gender equality issue to push through. The other one is generates more leadership. And the adaptive moves, we have community co-creation initiative. We target the effort to those pushing back, cross-sectional collaborations, local capacity building.
Thank you. So moving on the stakeholders and their process, we've identified that the stakeholders here involved the cabinet secretaries. Their process is a description of our priorities. And we have policy staff who make policies, but they lose on their time the freedom to ignore gender analysis. And then male-dominated technical teams, like climate change, all those things. What they lose is their professional identity. That's yeah. And then looking at the specific context factors, no one is the rational politics, the change happens through relationship and not through formal policies, memos, and yeah, it's always whom you know and. So, and the second one is the cultural authority patterns. The junior staff cannot easily challenge the senior men or senior leaders. This makes distributive leadership a bit harder. In our first 90 days plan, the goal is not to accelerate implementation, but to shift who owns the problem. So the first day to 30 days is the consultation to build collaboration with other ministries and stakeholders. And between 31st and the 60 days period, and then the other 61 to 90 days period is like create visible peer accountability to share plans at senior official meetings. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Did all of these, any of these scenarios feel, I think this table here, they felt very real. It felt really.
Very much so.
So, we're actually out of time. But honestly, it's like when you come into a room with beautiful people like yourself and looking at these really interesting things, it's as though you go into a slightly different bit of the universe and time just evaporates. We've been together for 2.5 hours and I don't know, maybe it feels longer to you, but it feels like a blink of the eye to me. So really quick, beautiful work on all these scenarios. Does adaptive leadership, adaptive governance, does it feel like something that you can take a part of home with you?
Yes.
It does? It does.
Very good.
Awesome. Awesome. Can I have one key takeaway from each table, if that's all right? Or is lunch ready? Ah. Who wants to volunteer a key takeaway and then I'll let you go? What do you think?
Well, it's just good to have it defined, I think. I think we've all sort of been in scenarios like this, but now we know the definition of that.
Nice. I would 100% encourage you. There's so much stuff available on the internet. If you think this adaptive leadership, I like this, then I've put a couple of readings. Gay has put them on Canvas for you. Watch that video of Dr. and Professor Ron Heifetz. You won't regret it. It's fabulous. But all the best for the rest of your program. You guys are fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.